The stage is set. Georgia travels to Tuscaloosa to take on Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is a matchup that truly needs no hype up or real introduction. If you ain't excited for this one, you ain't got a pulse. And speaking of guys that'll get you pumped up, my good friend Brooks Austin, the film guy, the director of recruiting for the On SI Network and the lead editor for Bulldogs on SI, and a self-made man with his entity and platform and the great things he does with content. Brooks, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man, no doubt, Chris. I think you were attempting to be on one of the social media teams right there. Georgia, Alabama, the stage is set. I can hear it right now. I can hear Alabama tweeting that one out with the voice of Chris Phillips introducing Brooks on the Twitter profiles. That would be awesome. Can we get that? Everyone else seems to get that. Can our networks get that? Can we get some social media teams out here clipping the boys? Please, can we do that?
I'm all for it. I was just trying to get you fired up, Brooks. Make sure that pulse is working. I know it is, by the way.
Yeah, no need over here. We wake up with the juice, baby.
Hey, exactly. Same here. That's why you and I, we're cut from the same cloth, my friend. That being said, hey, let's talk a little bit of Georgia Bulldogs, Brooks. Sitting at 3-0 right now. Got knocked out of the number 1 spot, now at number 2. Big season opening win over Clemson. Take care of the business in week 2 against Tennessee Tech. And then a hard-fought game at Kentucky, 1-point victory, which I actually caught some of your commentary on that. But from what you've seen to this point through 3 weeks, anything surprise you with Georgia? Is it kind of what you expected? Just your overall thoughts on this Georgia Bulldogs team through 3 games.
Yeah, I'll start with the negatives. I've been surprised by the amount of pressures that this offensive line has given up. They haven't given up a ton of sacks, and a lot of that has been because there's obviously been some growth and some maturation in the pocket manipulation and the pocket handling of Carson Beck, using his athleticism a little bit better to extend plays, avoid sacks, things like that. But this was an offensive line unit that returned 4 or 5 starters from a year ago, and a center in Jared Wilson who's played extremely well through 3 games. But they have pretty much given up consistent pressure throughout this football season, and that was definitely surprising to me. I kind of knew Trevor Etienne was going to be really good. I don't know if I expected him to be this much of a factor, and honestly, through 3 games being the most consistent known portion of this offense, I expected that to be the decision-making and processing of Carson. But, last week against Kentucky, I saw a few turn downs, meaning like the quarterback's looking at a wide-open receiver, turns it down and goes to another read. I saw a little bit too much of that turn downness from Carson Beck than I expected in year 2 as a starter. I expected to see an ultra confident quarterback, and I thought Kentucky threw a bunch of different things defensively. Now, give them credit. Disguised looks, played a bunch of different packages. I think Kentucky did a good job of creating some hesitancy with Carson Beck. So I think those 2 things have kind of surprised me to start this football season, man.
Brooks, do you feel like people overreacted to Georgia's 1-point win at Kentucky? Because it just seemed like to me people were so ready to move Georgia out of the 1 spot, whether it be power rankings, BA people. And I know, Brooks, that stuff doesn't matter. But It just – have we reached the point where people – we talked about Bama fatigue before, and people just couldn't wait on the downfall. Like, have we reached that place with Georgia? Because, I didn't budge with the Dogs. I've still got them at number 1 in my power rankings. Again, take it for what it's worth. But I just think it seemed like to me, I'm like, there's a lot of people out there that seem to be jumping the gun and are kind of ready for Georgia to slide out of the top spot. Like, did you notice that, or do you think it was justified to move Georgia out of the top ranking, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, you're a 22.5-point favorite on the road against an SEC team that just got waxed at home by South Carolina the week before, and you win by 1 point. There's going to be some due overreaction to that. There's going to be some, maybe they're not who we thought they were type of vibes around that football program. And to be honest with you, I don't think they really care. And they can say that, the lip service, all that stuff. It doesn't matter now more so than ever before. As long as you're in some type of top 11 ranking at the end of the year, everything's going to take care of itself with regards to the college football playoffs. So I don't know if rankings carry that much weight as they used to, as we all know. But from a confidence standpoint, I don't know if they'll allude to this inside the building, but as an analyst watching this football program for the last 17 games with Carson Beck as the quarterback and watching how defenses have really tried to play against them, there's not a lot of fear that this quarterback's going to beat you over the top right now, or at least be able to do so consistently. I've seen a lot of teams kind of crowd the box. Clemson played middle field safety closed all game, meaning they just played cover 3 pretty much the entire football game. And Georgia's coordinating staff ended up, kind of tearing them apart in the second half because they didn't really have a changeup, did Clemson. But the point remains, right? The point is there's a lot of football teams dedicating to stopping the run right now because they don't believe that Georgia can consistently hit deep shots down the field and threaten them. And here's the good news for Georgia. All it's really going to take is one or two of those, and then the defensive game plan has to change. Now we can't play in the box. Now we can't dedicate bodies to stopping the run because they have threatened us vertically. So I think that's going to have to be something moving forward that Georgia's going to have to consistently get better at to beat some of these really explosive teams in college football nowadays, four of which are on their schedule: Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and I'm missing one, Texas, obviously, as well. A lot of offenses on this schedule that can score quickly, which means you're going to have to do so as well. I think momentum plays are obvious in football, right? It's the turnovers and stuff like that. I think the biggest momentum play, particularly when you're on the road, is when the team that you're playing scores explosively. When they score with a 60-yard touchdown, when they score with an 80-yard touchdown. I compared it last night on our show to a high school basketball player dunking in a gymnasium, right? It just, people go crazy. The whole place loses their shit. That's what happens when this Alabama offense scores this explosively, and any offense does. Georgia has to get better at that department.
So, Brooks, that being said, let's move into this ball game because you bring up a really interesting matchup in this one. And the thing that I've heard a lot of folks talk about, we've talked about as well, is Georgia and finding more explosives down the field and who those top candidates are going to be on the outside. Obviously, we knew what Georgia had to replace coming in. But you look at the matchup, I mean, Alabama, the secondary, I think, for them has been a surprise for sure early on. Keon Sabb, I think, has been really good at the safety spot, but they're still young back there. Do you feel like that's an area where Georgia can expose Bama, or at least try to? Would you expect them to take shots? And who are maybe some of those top candidates in your mind that can emerge as some of those big play threats on the outside? Because to your point, I think Georgia's going to have to loosen up the defense and at least keep these guys honest to have that balance of run and pass.
I think if UCF's Byron Brown understood what the forward pass could do to offenses, I think UCF might have hit some touchdowns in that football game. In fact, I know they would have. They had guys running naked in the back end. Now, a lot of that was due to the fact that UCF was running the football really, really well, right? Alabama's dedicating a bunch of bodies to the box, playing a lot of man-to-man coverage, maybe even mixing some zero in, right, to make sure that they can dedicate enough bodies to the box to stop the run. Now, all of a sudden, explosives open up in the back end, but like I said, USF's quarterback, it just ain't hitting those right now. That's not what he's made to do. He's made to move the chains with his legs, and he did exactly that in that game. I thought Wisconsin's backup quarterback had opportunities to hit some deep shots in this football game. Couldn't hit them, couldn't complete them. I do think these corners, if anywhere on this defense you're vulnerable to getting quote-unquote beat consistently, I do think these corners can give up some ground. They can give up some grass and some separation in this man-to-man coverage defense that Bama likes to play a lot of. You mentioned it, man. The safety core and the nickel core, in my opinion, are as good as they get in college football. Those two safeties, Malachi Moore and Keon Sabb. And then I really love what Devontae Smith has been able to do in the nickel this year for Alabama on tape. They have NFL football players in the middle of the field, no doubt about it. I do think the corners are a little bit vulnerable. As we've seen through the first three games, they just, like I said, opposing quarterbacks haven't been able to hit those guys. And you mentioned finding explosives as an offense from Georgia. Guys, I think they've been called. I think they've been open. I just don't think you've hit them. So it's not about finding them. It's about completing them when they're found. And I think they're going to be found on Saturday. It's a matter of completing them when you find them.
Execution at an all-time premium in a game like this. Brooks, on the other side of the football, Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart have the task of slowing down, containing, stopping Jalen Milroe in a high-powered offense. I thought last year's SEC championship game, personnel is different now, but it was really, really interesting the way they attacked him, tried to keep him in pocket. Obviously, Alabama was able to move Georgia's defensive front and run the football, which was something we weren't really accustomed to seeing. Thoughts on how Schumann and Kirby, how you think they're going to attack Jalen Milroe? Do you expect more of an aggressive approach, sending some different blitz packages, or like what are you looking for in regards to slowing him down? Because going to get his, but you got to find a way, obviously, to get Jalen Milroe kind of off his rhythm.
It's the same analysis. Push the pocket, keep him within it. I don't think you can spy this guy. He's just gonna outrun your spies. Like it doesn't matter. So like Georgia tried that last year to start the football game, rushing 3, dropping 2 spies. So if he ran right, we got him. If he ran left, we got him. inevitably he ended up just holding the football a lot in that football game and allowing concepts to develop, and then started driving balls down the field. I got a question for you, Chris, and it's something I failed to talk about last night on my show because we just ran out of time. But what do you think the most difficult part about preparing for Jalen Milroe is?
I think there's multiple, man. I mean, I think he can beat you with a deep ball. He can beat you with his legs. It's just that matching, like to your point, you can't spy him. So you're kind of rolling the dice no matter what you do. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's containing him more than anything.
Okay, so that's on Saturday, executing whatever plan we prepared. But preparing for this guy is impossible because there's not a human on the earth that plays the quarterback position like this guy. So you can't simulate a look all week during practice. We can't give our defense anything that results to looking like this guy. In fact, I was sitting here last night trying to figure out how Georgia would do it. If I were Georgia, how would I do it? And here's how I would have to do it now that Brock Vandagriff's off the roster. We don't have a mobile threat. Jaden Rashada doesn't run 4.48. Gunnar Stockton doesn't run 4.48. Ryan Puglisi doesn't run 4.48. We got nobody that can simulate what this guy does. So we're going to go into Saturday virtually blind. We're not going to have an idea of what it looks like. So here's what I would do. Honestly, it's the only thing you can do. I would put Gunnar Stockton 6 yards deep in the shotgun. He would have a ball in his hand. Zacoby White would be in front of him. Zacoby White would be taken off every single play. We'd have to get that guy on the ground, and then Gunnar Stockton is going to be back there to beat us with the ball, because both options can happen at any point, at any time, at any point in this football game. I don't know how you prepare for this guy. I know how teams try to stop him, but they get falsified confidence during the week because there ain't a soul. There's not a soul on this planet that can give you a look. So I that's the hardest part for me. It's like Kirby talked about it yesterday. Sometimes the best thing you can do is cover everybody. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is cover everybody, because there is not a play where he lines up and we can say, all right, well, I think this is what they're going to do. No, there is 100% an unpredictability about this position or the way that this guy plays the position. And there's an inability to prepare for it. It's the hardest defensive task anybody's going to have all year, in my opinion. When you combine the explosive passing attack with the fact that this human being is the most explosive passer and runner in college football, good luck, man. Nightmares all week. Luckily, Glenn Schumann's a genius, and he'll try to figure it out, and I'm sure he's fine, and he's going to be okay. As an analyst watching it, I just got done doing an offensive film study. I don't know what you do. I really don't. I don't know what you do.
Brooks, what's the latest in regards to Georgia and the injury front? I know we've obviously in the line of scrimmage, Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, Tate Ratledge. Those are some of the big names that have been banged up. How's Georgia looking going into this one?
I don't think you get Tate Ratledge back probably until Florida. Maybe, I think best bet Florida. You know, he had tightrope ankle surgery, so that's anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks or 27 days if you're Brock Bowers. But he ain't Brock Bowers. No one is. So I think it's going to be a little extended time with Tate. Now, if this game were played last week and no bye week, I think Georgia's probably without Jordan Hall. They're probably without Michael Williams, and Jordan Hall, or Warren Brinson might give it a run. Sounds like he's been practicing last week. But this week, or this game being a bye week in advance and in between, I think is going to allow Georgia to be extremely healthy, or the closest version to it. I think you do get Warren Brinson back. I think you do get Jordan Hall back. I think Michael Williams gives it a run. And here's why. It's a grade 2 ankle sprain. Okay. It's not a high ankle sprain. It's a grade 2 low ankle sprain. That is a matter of swelling, and that is a matter of pain tolerance. I think if this game were played last week, we put a big old tape job on Michael Williams, and we see how much that adrenaline takes over. I think they do the same exact thing this weekend. I expect 13 to be in pads. I don't know how affected he's going to be by this, right? I don't know the severity of it. I don't know his pain tolerance. I know he's a tough football player. I don't know how swelling is going to impact these things. Those are the variables about this, but football tells me 13 is going to be in pads ready to go. That's what football tells me, not what inside sources tell me, not what my doctorate's degree that I don't have tell me, just what football tells me. Grade 2 ankle sprain. We're 3 weeks out from August 31st when that injury happened. I think you see Michael Williams give it a go in this football game.
Brooks, I want to discuss the intangible side of this one, and obviously the matchup and what it means, right? Georgia, Alabama, when Nick Saban retired months ago, we talked about, well, who does this benefit most in the SEC? I think most people pointed at the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart and that program kind of assuming their rightful place as the top of the tops in the league. I mean, I'm not going to ask you how important is this one, Brooks, because that feels like a silly question. But just speaking on the gravity of this game, I mean, listen, the loser of this game, their season is far from over. I mean, with a 12-team college ball playoff, I think for Georgia, it's probably more so important because I think Bama's schedule is a little bit more manageable than what Georgia's going to face down the stretch. But Brooks, just speak to, I mean, this game to me goes so far beyond the playoff and the national title. Like this one's personal, for Georgia. And I think, getting that Crimson Tide size monkey off the back, assuming the rightful place, the passing of the torch moment, if you will. Can you just quantify, can you put into words how big this one is and how important this one is for not just the Georgia fan base, the team, but this program as a whole to take their rightful place as that top program in the conference?
Yeah, you mentioned it, right? The monkey off the back. I think that every football fan that I talk to that is a Georgia football fan feels that, right? It's still the Crimson. They still see that jersey. It might not be Nick Saban on that sideline, but guys, it's still a top 5 football team with all of Saban's football players and a really, really good football coach. Like, we all know that. Like, Kalen DeBoer's really, really good at what he does. So from a monkey off the back standpoint, you're right. Kirby was asked about nostalgia left and right. It's a moot point, man. It's a top 5 matchup in the SEC. This bitch gonna be lit no matter what. Sorry to cuss on your network here, but
no problem.
People are getting up for this football game no matter what. If you need extra motivation, if you need extra juice to get off the bus, put your pads on and strap it up for this one. What? Like, come on, man. Like, go out, play football, play it aggressively, and have fun in a top 5 football matchup on ABC with Kirk Herbstreit on the call. It don't get no bigger. You don't need any extra stakes. You don't need everyone telling you it's a playoff game. We know that. Go out and play football. I don't think all the other the narrative stuff on the outside, I don't know how much that plays a role middle of second quarter when it's a 1-score football game.
Let guys like us worry about that. Y'all go play ball, right?
Exactly.
Brooks, when you look at this game, key or keys to the game for Georgia if they're going to go into Tuscaloosa and get this W?
Yeah, I think the number one key we already hit on, Alabama's going to hit explosives in this football game. There is no doubt about it. When they do so, you have to answer. We can't give up a 2-play scoring drive on defense and then go 3 and out on offense. That ball and that momentum will roll downhill really, really quickly. So when Alabama scores explosively, offensively, Georgia has got to answer either with a long drive or points of their own. You can't do this, maybe we'll be able to drag this one out. No. You've got to answer when they hit shots on the offensive side of the football. I think that's the biggest key in this game, to keep the momentum evenly balanced. I think if there's an outnumbered list of explosives, you're going to lose. And look, we've seen this play out through the first four weeks of college football season. You can lose time of possession. You can lose yardage gain. You can lose first downs gain. You can lose on third down. But if you win explosives and you win the turnover battle, you're going to win the football game. We just saw this Saturday night. I know it's the SEC podcast, but we just saw that Saturday night in Provo, right? BYU got smoked in total yardage by over 200 yards. They were way worse on third down. They were terrible all across the field. They had more explosives. They won the turnover battle. They won the damn game by 29 points. You can't lose the explosives battle in this football game by a drastic margin. And most importantly in this football game, and we talked about this last year going to the SEC championship game, the team that makes the last mistake loses this football game between Georgia and Alabama. It has played out that way every single time these two teams match up, okay? Last year in the SEC championship game, it was a fumble on an end around inside your own end. That was the last turnover midway through the third quarter. You lost the football game by 3. 2 years ago in the national championship, it was the pick 6 by Bryce Young. It was the last mistake made in that football game, and it was the ultimate deciding factor. You cannot make the last one. Whoever does will probably lose this ball game.
Brooks Austin, the film guy, does a great job with SI as well. Brooks, let folks know, just in case they've been living under a rock, where they can check out all of your great work.
Yeah, man, I know this is the SEC podcast. We do it as well over on the Film Guy Network. You can check us out. I know one thing about college football fans, you can't get enough of it. So if you're watching this, you're more than likely to enjoy what we got going on as well over on the Film Guy Network. All of my social media handles at Brooks Austin BA. Chris, man, I appreciate you for having me on, brother.
Yeah, Brooks, thanks for taking the time, man. Excited to link up with you this weekend in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely, buddy.